South Africa's internet economy contributes about 2% to GDP, and it's forecast to reach 2.5% by 2016. So joining us for more on this is Arthur Goldstuck, who's MD at World Wide Worx, and from Cape Town it's Russel Stromin, who's MD at Strike Media. Arthur, bricks versus clicks, that's a nice little bit of jargon. South African retailers slow to see the opportunities, apart from a couple of exceptions on online shopping.
Good evening, Dave. There's no question about that. Aside from the likes of Woolworths and Pick n Pay, who have been in that game for quite a long time, most of the online retail running is being made by pure play internet players. Although some of them, like Kalahari, have got Naspers behind them. But as you know, Naspers is pushing very strongly into the internet space globally, and Kalahari is their online retail play. The problem with that is that a lot of the long-established online retailers have become quite complacent, including Kalahari, and they've stagnated a little. So newcomers have been making all the running lately. And every year it seems there's a new flavor of the moment, and that's a great challenge to the established guys who don't quite know how to deal with all these newcomers and all the new business models, for that matter.
Russell, let's bring in Russell from Cape Town. Is it that the South African retailers in that great boom in the mid-2000s had a wonderful time and were allowed to luxuriate in expanding bricks rather than clicks?
Hi, David. It's really not a fair question for me because I'm an expert in mobile marketing and ecommerce. So, you know, although a lot of people are accessing the internet from their cell phones and more so than ever, it's problematic for online retailers in the ecommerce space at the moment because of payment issues. But, you know, there's 750 million odd cell phones going to be around in Africa by the end of this year. About 50% of them will be smartphones by the end of next year, so we hope to see a lot of growth going in that environment, specifically where you see a lot of people who are accessing the internet from the first time from their cell phone rather than from a PC. They just don't have access.
Kevin?
Arthur, what would you say is the main factor holding back the growth of retailing through the internet? Is it to do with access to computers, or is it to do with hesitancy about making payment online? Have South Africans got past that handing over your credit card details online?
In fact, they have, but it's more complex than that. We've developed a model called the digital participation curve, which shows that people have to be online for an average of about 5 years. That's an average, so some would take 10 years, some would do it the moment they get online, before they participate in the internet economy, by which we mean making purchases online, transacting, and perhaps setting up their own websites and the like. They really have to build confidence in the whole environment, not just the payment part. That's the misnomer, is that it's all about security. It's not. It's about the whole ecosystem.
Russell, if you could come in a moment after I've asked Arthur this question, is why are the retailers so slow? We're told they're so good, they're world class, they're so competitive. We're talking about Whitey Basson a moment ago, yet only two of them, and in the food thing, are clothing retailers, which also are supposed to be world class. Foschini, Truworths, huge returns, Mr. Price, nothing.
Well, we have a great anecdotal case study. I can't name names, but we were involved 5 years ago in advising a big retail group. And we did an in-depth analysis to show what the return would be on an investment in the online environment. And the return looked like something like 15%. They were looking for returns of around 30% from any investment. So they decided to invest in store expansion rather. The result of that is that 5 years down the line, they've been closing a lot of stores, but also they're now way behind, a further 5 years behind the curve in terms of where other online retailers are. So it's not only about the return on investment, it's also about positioning yourself in a new and growing space that's going to grow very fast in the coming years.
Russell?
Yes, absolutely. I agree with Arthur very much. The growth is phenomenal. But it's also about closing the loop, you know, and I'm sorry to bring this back to mobile again, because mobile is online, although it's in your pocket. But the two examples that you mentioned, the Foschini Group and ShopRite, right now today, Strike Media is sending out mobile vouchers for both of those institutions, where you can actually now take your cell phone into the store, you get a voucher on your phone, and you can redeem it at the till point. So it's about closing that loop where you're bringing the bricks and mortar and the virtual world together. The confidence in that kind of experience is a lot higher than the pure online experience, if I can put it that way.
Kevin?
Look, I think it's an area that our retailers, I would imagine, will grow into. We've seen a lot of growth within the US. I'd just like to ask Arthur this. Can you put our retailing on internet in the context of the US? In other words, I would imagine the US is at the top of the pile. What sort of penetration do they have through retailing online in the US compared with South Africa?
One can look at it as a percentage of overall retail. In South Africa, it's well under 1% of overall retail. In the United States, it's somewhere around 7-8% of overall retail. So that shows you how mature that environment is and how immature ours is. But a lot of that has to do with the fact that there's tremendous integration between physical retail and online retail. As Russell was saying, that's a critical part of a strategy for a bricks and mortar type retailer. But at the same time, one of the big areas of retail in the United States is clothing, apparel. And that's largely premised on a long culture of mail order buying of clothing, which we don't have in this country.
I just want to also ask Russell about the technology is puzzling, of course. He's just talked about taking the cell phone into the shop as opposed to ordering food, which I know Pick n Pay does that, for example. You go through the list, you order it, they deliver it. But the comment was made that this is delegated to the IT department because it's technology. In fact, it should be delegated. In fact, the marketing department should not have it delegated. It should be seizing it as a core competence. Russell.
Absolutely, I agree with you. It is very much a marketing thing. If I can just give you a quick example, David, of something which is called a connected consumer, and I'll use the example of my daughter shopping for shoes because you were talking about apparel. And she goes into trying a pair of shoes. First thing she does, puts them on, and then she takes a picture of it, and she's busy sending the photograph to all of her peers over BlackBerry BBM to get buy-in from them to say whether it's cool or not cool. And then the next thing she does is she takes the shoes off, she puts them on top of the box, and she takes a picture of it, making sure she gets all the labels, all the barcodes, everything intact. And then she gives them back to the salesman, and then off we go home. And online she goes to try and see where she can buy them cheaper. This is a very interesting phenomenon to watch. And what's actually happening for an apparel store, like a shoe store, for example, is that it's becoming more of a showroom than a retail outlet. And those retailers need to learn to embrace the technology that is available to them, to be able to take advantage of that situation and, for example, build their database from that peer group itself.
Yeah. Russell, valuable point there. We'll have to stop this discussion now, and it's the sort of thing that the good retailer is not going to wait for market research. He's going to work out what it's got to do, and reminds one of Henry Ford, who said if I asked them what they wanted, they'd ask for a faster horse. And that's maybe the mentality we've got to get over.